Welcome back to the Dragon Podcast, the place where horror history comes alive. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most notorious horror sagas of all time, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A franchise that began as a low-budget shocker in the 1970s, became a cult midnight movie in the 80s, and then transformed into one of the most whispered-about lost films in horror history. We'll explore Tobe Hooper's raw and terrifying 1974 original, his gonzo comedy horror sequel in the 1980s, and finally, the story of All-American Massacre, a project that lingered in the shadows for more than 2 decades before resurfacing. So grab your headphones and let's head back to the scorching Texas heat of 1974. When audiences first saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, many believed they were watching something real. Some even thought it was a snuff film. That was no accident. Director Tobe Hooper wanted the movie to feel like a living nightmare. The story itself was simple. 5 young friends traveling through Texas encounter a cannibalistic family and fight for their lives. But the way it was made, that's what gave it its lasting power. Hooper and his small crew filmed in 100-degree Texas heat with almost no money. The budget was under $140,000. The actors often wore the same costumes for weeks without washing because they couldn't afford replacements. The stench on set was overwhelming, especially with real animal bones and carcasses used as props. And then there was Leatherface. Played by Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface wasn't just another movie killer. He was silent, unpredictable, and completely terrifying. Hansen studied the movements of special needs children to give Leatherface a physicality that was awkward but horrifyingly real. But here's the kicker. Despite its reputation, the original film has very little blood. The horror is mostly suggestion. The editing, the sound design, the screams, the chainsaw revving, that's what got under the audience's skin. When it was released, the movie was a sensation. Many theaters refused to screen it, but it still made more than $30 million worldwide. Critics were split. Some dismissed it as depraved trash, while others called it a masterpiece of modern horror. Over time, it became the latter, a landmark film that set the stage for everything from Halloween to the Blair Witch Project. The film's reputation only grew in the late 70s and early 80s, when the home video boom led to what the UK tabloids called the video nasty panic. Censors and moral guardians claimed movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were corrupting the youth. In fact, the film was outright banned in the UK for decades. You could rent a copy underground, but it was illegal to sell or distribute it officially until 1999. By then, the film had taken on an almost mythical status, the movie so shocking, so depraved, that your parents didn't want you to see it. That reputation only cemented its cult status. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre wasn't just a movie anymore. It was a rite of passage. So where do you go after creating one of the scariest movies ever made? For Tobe Hooper, the answer was unexpected. In 1986, Hooper returned with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. But instead of repeating the same gritty realism, he went in the opposite direction: loud, satirical, over-the-top horror comedy. At the heart of the sequel is Stretch Brock, a Texas radio DJ played by Carolyn Williams. One night, Stretch accidentally records a brutal killing live on air. That pulls her straight into the orbit of the Sawyer family. The film also introduced Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley in a performance that would define his career. Chop Top was Leatherface's brother, a Vietnam vet with a metal plate in his skull and a habit of scratching it with a wire coat hanger. He was manic, grotesque, and unforgettable. Unlike the first film, Part 2 embraced gore. With makeup effects by Tom Savini, it featured chainsaw duels, skin masks, and buckets of blood. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Fans expecting another gritty nightmare were shocked. But over time, it gained its own cult following the kind of movie you'd see at midnight screenings, laughing and screaming with the crowd. It showed that the Chainsaw universe wasn't just about terror. It could also be satire, a grotesque mirror of American excess in the 1980s. Now, let's talk about one of horror's greatest what-ifs. In 1998, Tobe Hooper's son, William Hooper, started work on a spin-off project titled All-American Massacre. The idea was simple, but brilliant. What happens when Chop Top gets caught? What stories does he tell from behind bars? Bill Moseley returned as Chop Top, now imprisoned and reflecting on the bloody legacy of his family. The film promised a mix of interviews, surreal flashbacks, and nightmarish sequences. It wasn't just going to be another slasher, it was part character study, part chainsaw fever dream. Fans were excited. Trailers surfaced online. Horror magazines teased it. But then, silence. Legal battles, budget issues, and production stalls killed the project before it could be finished. For years, fans traded rumors. Was it lost? Was it ever going to be released? Some called it the holy grail of unreleased horror. Then came the surprise. In recent years, the lost tapes were discovered. All-American Massacre wasn't gone after all. Work is now being done to assemble the footage into a finished release. For fans who waited more than 2 decades, this is the horror equivalent of finding buried treasure. So there you have it, from the raw terror of the 1974 classic, to the gonzo satire of Part 2, to the myth and resurrection of All-American Massacre. Few horror franchises have had a journey as strange and fascinating as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a story of low-budget filmmaking, censorship battles, cult stardom, and unfinished legends. And now, as All-American Massacre prepares to finally emerge from the shadows, one thing is clear. Leatherface, Chop Top, and the Sawyer clan are here to stay. Because some nightmares never die.